If you're trying to decide what to plant in your garden, add celery to the list. The flavor, combined with the convenience of harvesting a stalk or two of celery anytime you need it, has earned celery a forever place in my cool season garden. Celery is on the list of the dirty dozen. That means that non-organic celery is one of the most pesticide-contaminated produce items. But when you grow your own celery, you know exactly how the celery was grown and what it was and was not treated with. In today's video, I'm going to share my best tips for growing celery so you can have homegrown organic celery straight from your garden. I'm Angela from Growing in the Garden, and I garden in Mesa, Arizona, Zone 9B. I love sharing garden inspiration and helpful tips to help you be successful in your own garden. There are a few different ways that you can plant celery. From seed, from transplant, and even from the cut-off end of a grocery store bunch of celery. Starting your own seeds indoors gives you the most control over the variety of celery that you're going to grow. You want to start 10 to 12 weeks before your last frost date, and then transplant celery seedlings when the soil temperature is at least 50 degrees. In cold areas, plant in the spring 4 weeks before the last spring frost. So if you live in a desert climate like I do, celery is going to grow best during the cooler months. So that means here in the low desert, you're going to start seeds indoors from July to September, and then you're going to plant transplants outside from the middle of September through December. If you can find transplants at a local nursery, that's also an excellent option. Planting from seed in the garden is not recommended because of the need for a long growing season. Transplant seedlings outside 8 to 10 inches apart at the same level as the nursery pot. For square foot gardening, plant 4 celery per square. Starting celery from the cutoff base is simple. At the same planting dates that you would use for transplants, plant that cutoff base in your garden. Dig down in the soil and plant that base in and cover it with a couple of inches of soil. Within a few days, sprouts will appear and you'll have celery growing in your garden. It really is a pretty simple way to get started growing celery. So here's what I've learned about growing from the different methods. This is the celery that was grown from scraps. So it actually grew quite a bit of leaves. So if that's what you're going for, that's not a bad thing. But as far as like nice big stalks, the stalks are definitely thinner and it has already started to bolt here. But it definitely grows from scraps and you do get a lot of leaves, but you're missing the nice big stalks. Growing celery from transplant yields the most consistent results. You're going to have longer, taller stalks of celery. So you can try all 3 methods and see which one you like. If you're starting from seed, there are plenty of varieties to choose from. Tango celery is less prone to stress from heat and moisture. Tall Utah is an upright celery plant rather than one that spreads out. Giant red and Chinese pink varieties add unusual color. This year I also planted cutting celery, which instead of growing tall, it grows wide and you can cut and harvest the stalks at any time. So what's the secret to growing celery? Well, it really comes down to 2 things. Lots of water and lots of nutrients. Celery's 95% water by weight and needs more water than most vegetables. If celery dries out, it can be stringy or bitter and bolt. Celery grows best in compost-rich soil that is high in organic matter. Throughout the growing season, you want to keep feeding celery. I like feeding celery with a fish emulsion solution once a month throughout the growing season. This is an excellent source of organic nutrients and nitrogen that won't burn the plants. It's easily absorbed and quickly taken up by the roots. You can also amend the soil around the celery with compost. Adding a nice thick layer of mulch also helps keep that moisture level up. One of my favorite parts of growing celery is going outside and harvesting a stalk or 2 or 3 whenever I need it. You can begin harvesting as soon as that celery has about 10 stalks on there. Homegrown celery often has a much stronger taste than you're used to. That is because the celery at the grocery store is traditionally blanched. The blanching gives the plant a lighter green color and a mild sweet taste. Unblanched stalks are darker green and tougher, but have more nutrients than the lighter blanched varieties. So if you'd like to try blanching celery, about 2 weeks before you're going to harvest, wrap or cover the stalks with heavy paper, soil, mulch, or anything else to help keep out the light. The top leaves should be exposed. Leave those in place for about 2 weeks before harvesting. It's so convenient to have fresh celery whenever I need it, and I really miss celery when temperatures heat up. Here in Arizona, I have harvest growing through late spring when temperatures really start to heat up. So you want to harvest all of that celery before temperatures get too hot. Cut it off at soil level with a knife. For the best flavor, you want to water your celery deeply the day before you harvest. If you leave the plant in the ground, it will probably bolt, and that means it's switching its production from leaves and stalks to seeds. It's going to send up a central stalk, which is going to flower and produce seeds. Just like most vegetables, celery is best when harvested and used right away, but there are a few ways to prolong the storage life. Placing that celery stalk end down in water is the secret to having it last longer. You can also freeze celery by chopping and blanching it for 2 minutes and then flash freezing it on a cookie sheet. Once frozen, you can store in freezer bags for up to a year. Juicing celery is another popular option. One of my favorite ways to preserve celery is by freeze drying. I freeze dry the stalks and also the leaves and then grind them into a powder. And then that's a really easy way to add lots of flavor to whatever I'm cooking. I also like to make celery salt with the freeze-dried celery stalks and leaves. The convenience of harvesting celery whenever I need it, along with the delicious flavor, means that celery will always have a place in my cool season planting list. Thank you so much for watching.